At their peak, American malls weren't just places to shop. They were where you went on first dates, where teenagers burned entire Saturdays, where the smell of Auntie Anne's pretzels hit you like a wall the second you walked through the door. They were a whole culture, and now, one by one, they're going dark. Today we're counting down the 5 iconic American malls that will close next. Which one dies first? Number 5. Palisades Center, West Nyack, New York. Opened in 1998, the Palisades Center in West Nyack, New York was once a monster of a mall. At over 2.2 million square feet spread across 4 stories, it was one of the largest shopping centers in the United States, and for years, one of the most visited. It had everything a mall needed to thrive. The world's tallest indoor ropes course, an ice rink, a bowling alley, a comedy club, a massive AMC IMAX theater with stadium seating. People drove in from New Jersey, from Manhattan, from all over the tri-state area. In its peak years, Palisades Center was a genuine destination, the kind of place you made a day out of. It got off to a contentious start, actually. The original construction was highly controversial. Local planners and environmental groups fought the project for years, concerned about traffic, wetland impact, and the sheer scale of what was being proposed. A 2.2 million square foot mall, sitting in a relatively small suburban town in Rockland County, isn't subtle. But it got built, it opened, and it worked for a while. Then the anchors started leaving. JCPenney closed its Palisades Center location. Lord & Taylor shuttered. One by one, the big names that gave the mall its gravitational pull, the stores people came specifically to visit, disappeared. And without anchor stores, malls lose the foot traffic that keeps the smaller tenants financially viable. This is a well-documented and consistent pattern in retail real estate. The large department stores at the ends of the corridors weren't just stores. They were engines. When they shut off, everything downstream starts to stall. When anchors such as Sears, JCPenney, or Macy's shuttered locations, they left gaping voids, both physical and contractual. Co-tenancy clauses often allowed smaller retailers to terminate leases or demand rent reductions, creating a domino effect. Once 2 anchors depart, the property can quickly tip into decline. Retail analysts cited by Newsweek, 2024. In February 2023, Wilmington Trust filed a commercial mortgage foreclosure complaint after Pyramid, operating the mall through its subsidiary Ecleco, missed payments on an $418.5 million loan. A court-appointed receiver was placed in charge in September 2024 to collect rents and manage the property. The foreclosure process concluded on February 5, 2026, when the mall was auctioned off to Black Diamond Capital Management for $175 million. A fraction of the $881 million the property had been valued at when the loan was issued in 2016. Pyramid had been fighting foreclosure challenges across multiple properties simultaneously, and Palisades was one the company ultimately couldn't hold. It joined a growing list of former Pyramid malls that had slipped away: Hampshire Mall in Massachusetts, Champlain Center in Plattsburgh, New York, Aviation Mall near Lake George. By early 2025, both of Rockland County's major retail malls were in serious distress. Palisades in foreclosure, the shops at Nanuet sold to a local developer for $60 million. The community that accommodated the mall for decades is now left managing the fallout. There's also a broader lesson in the Palisades Center story about what happens when a community bets heavily on a single commercial project, and that project fails. Rockland County spent years fighting the construction of this mall, then ultimately accepted it, and then watched the local tax base become dependent on its assessed value, only for the mall to collapse financially and trigger property tax reassessments that cost the local school districts millions of dollars in expected revenue. Both Clarkstown Central and Nanuet Union Free School Districts received tax refunds from the mall owners as part of 2024 settlements over years of overassessment claims. The community didn't just lose a shopping mall, it lost tax revenue it had been counting on. This is the part of the mall closure story that doesn't make it into the nostalgic YouTube videos about abandoned food courts. Behind every dead or dying mall is a local government that was depending on it. A community whose commercial real estate market is affected by the vacancy, and workers whose jobs evaporated. In Palisades Center's case, those downstream effects are very real and very much still playing out. The Palisades Center sits on prime real estate near the New York metropolitan area, which is probably the one thing keeping serious money interested. The land has value, even if the mall concept has failed. Whether the site becomes housing, a mixed-use development, or something else remains unsettled. What it almost certainly won't remain is a traditional indoor shopping mall. The ropes course and the ice rink had a good run, but Palisades Center, as a functioning mall, has already effectively ended. The foreclosure was the confirmation, not the cause. Number 4, Westfield San Francisco Center, San Francisco, California. San Francisco's Westfield Center was once among the most productive retail locations in the entire United States. Opened in 1988 and dramatically expanded in 2006 into a 9-story complex integrated with the historic Emporium building. It sat at 865 Market Street, in the heart of downtown San Francisco. At its peak, the center generated over $700 per square foot in annual retail sales, a number that most mall operators would consider extraordinary. The 2006 expansion was a serious investment. Westfield's parent company transformed the space into a flagship-caliber shopping center in one of America's most economically dynamic cities, anchored by Bloomingdale's and Nordstrom. The food hall was high-end. The tenant mix was strong. For years, it performed at a level that validated every dollar spent on the expansion. It was the kind of urban mall that people pointed to as proof that the format could work in a dense city environment. Then things changed in ways nobody quite predicted. San Francisco's downtown core began experiencing a crisis driven by the convergence of several forces. Remote work following the pandemic hollowed out the office worker population that had kept downtown retail viable on weekday afternoons. Property crime concerns became a national story. Foot traffic to downtown San Francisco dropped significantly, leaving retailers uncertain about whether a physical location there made financial sense. In May 2023, Nordstrom announced it was closing its San Francisco Center flagship. The company cited the dynamics of the local market. Nordstrom's space in the center occupied nearly 300,000 square feet, roughly a third of the mall's leasable retail area. When a tenant that size walks out the door, the economics of what remains become nearly impossible to sustain. Westfield San Francisco Center is at a crossroads, not just as a retail space, but as a symbol of what downtown San Francisco has become. Local San Francisco Business Reporting, 2023. The response from the property's owner was unambiguous. In June 2023, Westfield's parent company, Unibail-Rodamco Westfield, and its co-owner Brookfield Properties stopped making payments on a $558 million loan and handed the property back to their lenders rather than continuing to operate a property they no longer believed was viable. This wasn't a distressed small operator making a desperate move. Unibail-Rodamco Westfield is one of the largest commercial real estate companies in the world. When a company of that scale decides to walk away, it's a clear-eyed assessment of the situation. The broader context for Westfield San Francisco's struggles matters here. San Francisco's retail sector has been in visible distress in a way that has attracted national attention. Whole Foods closed its flagship location in the city. Nordstrom wasn't the only major retailer to exit downtown. The Union Square shopping district, which had been one of the most valuable retail corridors in the country, has experienced significant vacancy. The problems at Westfield San Francisco Center aren't unique to the building or its management. They reflect a larger urban retail crisis specific to a city undergoing a painful economic and social transition. What makes Westfield's case different from the typical suburban mall decline is the setting. This isn't a mall in a shrinking, exurban town. This is a 9-story retail center in one of the wealthiest cities in the world, in a location that should theoretically be able to support serious retail indefinitely. The fact that it couldn't, that the property became unviable even in that context, says something about how completely the conditions for traditional enclosed retail have deteriorated in certain urban markets. It's a different species of failure than what hit Destiny USA or Boulevard Mall, but the outcome looks similar from the outside. San Francisco's city government and business community have been actively discussing ways to revitalize the downtown corridor, with various proposals around office to residential conversions, entertainment zoning, and public space development. Whether the Westfield building becomes part of that recovery or remains a cautionary example remains to be seen. The mall continues to operate in an increasingly hollowed-out form. Bloomingdale's, which had been the last remaining anchor, announced in January 2025 that it was closing, and did so in April 2025, leaving the mall without any anchor stores at all. By mid-2025, the property was effectively a dead mall, with the few remaining tenants reporting that online food delivery made up more than a third of their restaurant business because foot traffic had become so sparse. With its anchors gone and ownership in limbo following the 2023 default, the Westfield San Francisco Center as a functioning retail destination is finished. Number 3. Circle Center Mall, Indianapolis, Indiana. Circle Center Mall opened in downtown Indianapolis in 1995 and was immediately a success story worth studying. It was built as a deliberate urban revitalization project. The city of Indianapolis and private developers partnered to create a retail anchor for the downtown core, sinking significant public and private money into a part of the city that needed reinvestment. For years, that bet paid off. The mall generated over $400 per square foot in annual sales at its peak around 2007, well above the national average for enclosed mall performance. For Indianapolis, a mid-sized Midwestern city that has worked consistently to maintain a viable, lively downtown, Circle Center was more than a shopping center. It was a civic statement, a working example that urban retail could function in a city that wasn't on the coasts. Companies like Nordstrom and local restaurants moved in. The energy downtown was real. Then the same forces dismantling malls across the country found Circle Center. Anchor stores departed one by one. Nordstrom, which had been there since opening day, closed its Circle Center location in 2011 after shifting focus to its newer store at the Fashion Mall at Keystone. Parisian eventually became Carson's and hung on for years before closing in 2018. With no anchor stores left, foot traffic fell, and the financial math became difficult. Remaining tenants left or chose not to renew. Sales per square foot dropped from $406 at peak in 2007 down to approximately $184 during the pandemic period, less than half the performance that had defined the mall's best years. At that revenue level, sustaining a 729,981 square foot retail property becomes genuinely hard to justify. In April 2024, Hendrix Commercial Properties acquired Circle Center Mall for $85 million. That price is revealing. $85 million for nearly 800,000 square feet of downtown Indianapolis real estate isn't a vote of confidence in the shopping center, it's a site acquisition price. The buyer is not buying a functioning mall. The buyer is buying land with a building on it that they plan to fundamentally transform. Hendrix has announced a $600 million redevelopment strategy over 10 years, converting the enclosed structure into an open-air mixed-use campus with residential units, office space, restaurants, and outdoor public areas. The city of Indianapolis committed $64 million in tax credits and financing to support the transformation. When the city government formally backs the destruction of its own downtown mall, the retail chapter is closed. The Regal Cinemas location, one of the last anchor-scale tenants, shut down at the end of October 2024. Circle Center Mall fully and permanently closed on December 31st, 2025, to allow the redevelopment to begin. The Indianapolis situation also raises a question worth sitting with. What happens to the identity of a downtown when its retail anchor is removed? For nearly 3 decades, Circle Center was part of what made downtown Indianapolis feel like a functioning urban center. It connected to the city's convention center infrastructure, fed foot traffic to nearby restaurants and hotels, and served as a walkable destination in a city built primarily around cars. Its replacement with a mixed-use campus may ultimately be a better urban outcome than the enclosed mall ever was, but the transition period, which will span most of this decade, will be felt. Indianapolis has invested significantly in its downtown over the past 30 years and has a track record of managing large-scale urban redevelopment. The city's backing of the Hendrix plan, with $64 million in support, reflects genuine confidence that the transformation can succeed. That's a meaningful difference from some of the other malls on this list, where the future of the site is genuinely unclear. What's notable about Circle Center is that it didn't become a creepy, half-lit ghost mall. It had a rapid descent from functional to not viable, and the response is active demolition and replacement rather than slow abandonment. Less haunting than some of these stories, but no less final. Number 2, Boulevard Mall, Amherst, New York. Boulevard Mall in Amherst, New York, situated just outside Buffalo, opened in 1962, making it one of the oldest enclosed malls in the country. It predates most of what people picture when they imagine the American Mall era. It was there before the mall became a cultural phenomenon, built at a moment when the format was still being figured out. For decades, it was the dominant shopping destination for the greater Buffalo region, and multiple generations of Western New Yorkers grew up going there the way people go to places that seem permanent. The mall did well through the 1970s, 1980s, and into the 1990s. Department stores anchored it. Sears was there. Macy's was there. The food court was busy on weekends. In a regional market like Buffalo, a city that has gone through profound economic transitions since its industrial peak, Boulevard Mall was a constant, a retail anchor that outlasted a lot of what came and went around it. The decline followed the now familiar pattern, stretched out over a longer time frame because the mall had deep roots in its community. Sears left, Macy's left. Without those anchors, the smaller specialty retailers had less reason to stay and less foot traffic to justify their costs. Other retail formats were quietly eating Boulevard Mall's traditional customer base, outlet malls with deeper discounts, big box stores with more convenience, and eventually online retail offering both simultaneously. Various ownership changes over the years produced various plans and proposals for reinvention or modernization, but none succeeded in reversing the trajectory. The problem was never uniquely bad management or unusually bad luck. The problem was the format in the market. An enclosed regional mall built in 1962 in a region with a complicated economy, structurally dependent on department store anchors that were themselves in crisis. That combination is very difficult to save. By 2025, Boulevard Mall is a ghost mall. The stores are gone. The corridors that once filled with people on Saturday afternoons are largely empty. A mall that opened 63 years ago and served multiple generations of a regional community has stopped functioning as a mall. Discussions about the property have centered on residential development and mixed-use redevelopment. The same conversation happening around dozens of dead and dying malls across the country. Whether anything materializes depends on financing, zoning, and whoever ultimately takes on the project. The timing of Boulevard Mall's decline is worth noting. The mall had already been struggling through the 2000s when the 2008 financial crisis hit the Buffalo region particularly hard. Upstate New York has faced economic headwinds for decades. Deindustrialization, population decline, and a tax environment that has made it difficult to attract the kind of high-income retail base that keeps malls healthy. Boulevard Mall operated in a market where the consumer demographics were shifting in ways that made premium retail increasingly difficult to sustain. What's unusual about Boulevard, compared to the others on this list, is just how long it held on. Malls built in 1962 have had 60-plus years of operational history. Many of its peers from that era were demolished decades ago. Boulevard outlasted them all. Not because it figured out how to compete in the modern retail environment, but because of inertia, community attachment, and the slow pace at which these institutional closures tend to move. Closing a mall that employs hundreds of people and anchors a section of suburban commercial real estate is never a quick or simple process. It happens in layers over years, until one day you realize it already happened. The irony is that the Buffalo region actually has a more diversified economy today than it did in the 1980s, with significant growth in healthcare, higher education, and technology sectors. Boulevard Mall simply never found a way to serve those new economic realities. It stayed a traditional enclosed shopping mall in a world that was increasingly done. Boulevard Mall is on this list not because it's about to close, but because it has essentially already closed. It crossed the line that most of these malls are only approaching. If you want to see what the end of this road actually looks like, Boulevard Mall in 2025 is a clear and honest picture. Number 1. Destiny, USA, Syracuse, New York. If there is a single American mall whose situation most completely illustrates how far and how fast these places can fall, financially, structurally, and symbolically, it is Destiny, USA in Syracuse, New York. And this is a story with very specific numbers attached to it, which is worth paying attention to. Start with the history. The site along the shore of Onondaga Lake was once home to the original Carousel Amusement Park, a local institution that operated from 1946 to 1983 before closing. The site was redeveloped, and Palisades Center opened in October 1990 as a major regional shopping mall. It expanded over the following years, and in 2012, a significant addition formally renamed it Destiny USA. At its height, Destiny USA drew approximately 17 million visitors annually. It became the largest shopping mall in New York State and one of the largest in the country. In 2014, when Pyramid Management Group secured $430 million in mortgage loans against the property, the mall was valued at approximately $710 million. A mall worth $710 million with $430 million in debt against it isn't necessarily in trouble. Those are numbers that can work, given stable occupancy, continued tenant income, and successful refinancing when the loans came due in 2019. That last part is where things went wrong. Pyramid was unable to refinance the loans at maturity. The company negotiated a forbearance agreement, a structured delay, that provided a series of one-year extensions, each conditional on meeting specific financial performance tests. The debt balance grew due to deferred interest payments during the pandemic, eventually exceeding $453 million. The extensions ran year after year, and the financial performance tests became harder to meet. The departures accumulated into something you can't look away from. JCPenney left, Lord & Taylor closed, Best Buy shut its location, Bon-Ton closed, Sports Authority departed, At Home left, Hugo Boss closed, Nordstrom Rack pulled out, Margaritaville shut down, TGI Fridays closed, World of Beer closed. Each closure isn't just a lost rent payment, it's a signal to every remaining tenant that the conditions here are getting harder to justify, which accelerates further departures. In the summer of 2024, the forbearance arrangement finally collapsed. Pyramid needed to make a $38.9 million payment to qualify for one final extension. The company confirmed it could not make the payment. The special servicer overseeing the loans terminated the forbearance agreement and announced that enforcement action was being planned. Destiny USA has been a landmark in our community for more than 30 years. We are currently engaged with the special servicer regarding modification of the loan and will continue to provide an exceptional experience for our 17 million annual guests and employees. Stephen Congal, CEO of Pyramid Management Group, August 2024. Kroll Bond Rating Agency assessed the situation and published a number that captures the scale of what has happened. The estimated liquidation value of Destiny USA, what you could actually expect to sell it for in a forced transaction, was $65.3 million. The mall owed over $430 million. In 10 years, the property had lost more than 90% of its assessed value. The building still stood. The parking lots were still there. But the economic engine that made those assets worth $710 million had essentially been dismantled from the inside. Pyramid Management Group, as a company, has been watching its portfolio collapse in real time. From 14 properties at its peak, it now owns just 8 malls and 1 shopping center. Hampshire Mall in Massachusetts, gone. Palisades Center in West Nyack, sold off at auction. Champlain Center in Plattsburgh, gone. Aviation Mall near Lake George, foreclosed in July 2025. And on top of all that, Wells Fargo has begun foreclosure on Pyramid's Walden Galleria in Buffalo after Pyramid defaulted on a $220 million mortgage there too. Destiny USA is the flagship of a company that has been losing its portfolio piece by piece and now faces its most consequential financial crisis at the very top of what remains. What happens to Destiny from here is genuinely uncertain. A foreclosure doesn't immediately shut down a mall. Malls in foreclosure often continue operating under receiver or new management while legal proceedings work through the system. And the physical space is massive, sitting on a lakefront site that has potential if you stop trying to make it a mall. Housing, entertainment, mixed development. The land has value, but as an iconic American mall that built its entire identity around being a colossal, irreplaceable shopping destination, the biggest in New York State, Destiny USA is staring at a financial reality that doesn't leave much room. Over $430 million in debt, a $65 million liquidation value, an owner who has already lost multiple other properties to the same pressures, no refinancing path visible. Which one dies first? The one with the worst math. And right now, by a significant margin, that's Destiny USA. There's a particular feeling you get walking through a mall that used to matter and no longer does. It's not quite sadness, not quite nostalgia. It's something more specific. The recognition that a place was once genuinely alive with people and commerce and Saturday afternoon energy, and now it isn't. And nothing about the physical structure has changed except the people inside it. American malls didn't decline because shopping stopped. People still spend money. They still walk into stores, try things on, and buy them. What changed is that the enclosed regional mall, this very specific commercial format that defined suburban life from the 1970s through the 1990s, stopped being the best vehicle for delivering what shoppers actually wanted. E-commerce took a piece. Discount retailers took a piece. Experiential spending took a piece. Remote work drained the downtown foot traffic that urban malls had built their economics around. The malls that survived and even thrived were the ones that stopped being malls in the traditional sense and became something else. Entertainment complexes, mixed-use environments, places organized around experiences. The ones on this list either didn't make that transition in time, or were carrying so much debt that no pivot was financially possible, or were serving markets that had already moved on. Destiny USA's lakefront site. Circle Center as downtown Indianapolis's civic anchor. Palisades Center's world's tallest indoor ropes course. The Saturday crowds that a generation of Buffalo residents remembers at Boulevard Mall. The high-end floors of Westfield San Francisco at its peak. These were real places that meant something to real people. Now they're cautionary tales, transformation sites, ghost corridors, or courtrooms. And somewhere out there, the next 5 are already being identified. If this video gave you something worth thinking about, leave a like. It genuinely helps the channel reach more people. And subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.